So these are Nicole's expenses. I split up the budget lines, it's mostly travel and a couple bucks in supplies.
We should be a little more Hello, everyone. It's Debbie. Now, it looks like, Ivan, I can't unmute you yet. You need to enter your PIN code. Is that I can unmute? And Andrea,
Morning, Debbie.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Andrea, are you there? I'm here. Perfect. So, Ivan, I don't know if you can hear us. I need you. Oh, he's got his hand up. Good. Let me see if I can answer that. Anna, how do I do hands up? You are connected. Okay, can we resend him how do we do that? For Evan.
Ivan has to redial in and put, Ivan, if you redial in and put your PIN code, can you
Oh. No, I can't unmute. Click on his name, yep.
Right click.
52.
Yeah. So Ivan, if you redial in using the same number and code that you used, and then put your PIN in after, it's 52.
Hashtag 52, hashtag. Okay, so in the room with me is Mike Dunn, Jenna Hitchcock, and Ashley Coster. So we're going to talk about sustainability and spread today, and just take about 45 minutes of your time, ideally. I'm hoping that Ivan can get in. All right.
Great. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Okay, so just waiting for. So if Andrea and Azad, if you want to mute while you're waiting.
Okay.
On your end, so there's no background noise, and hopefully we'll be able to get Ivan. Oh, there we go. Ivan, are you there? Ivan, can you hear me?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, good to hear your voice. Okay, so if you want to mute at your end, and we'll carry on then. You can see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, and Andrea, if you want to mute as well on your end. All right. So our plan today is to talk about sustainability and spread, to walk you through the sustainability planner so it's very familiar, and then just introduce you to the HQO spread planner to help with how you're going to brag about the fabulous work you've done with your project. So if we think about where we are right now, so we've gone through the model for improvement, and we're down at the very bottom in sustainability and spread. All right, there we go. And we're going to introduce you to the NHS Sustainability Tool and the E-QIP spread planner. So I'm going to get right on to those things. So sustainability and spread is really what we need to continue to do, and who else would benefit from hearing about what it is we have learned. And that's the intention of both of those areas. And as you recall, this slide will hopefully be familiar, that what we don't want to do is do all of this work and then have it not continue, because we don't put in place a variety of different things that will assist us to maintain those gains. The other thing we don't want to do is we don't want to not have an opportunity to share some of our learnings and invite others to also benefit from our learnings. Oh, Miss Laura has arrived as well. Welcome, Laura. And Jen is here too.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as.
So what is sustainability? So sustainability is about holding the gains. It includes standardization, documentation, measure and review, and training and education. And the key pieces for each of you at this point is really what do you need to continue to do that's going to allow you to hold your gains. And sometimes that is making sure you've standardized your approach based on your PDSA cycle. So what's working and what do you want to continue to do? Making sure that there's clear direction on how to do that. So that would be in your policies, in your procedures, and your protocols, so that everybody knows how to do it the right time, the first time, the right time, and your measure and your review. And so it becomes part of your routine practice. There are times that there's some training and education that needs to happen with staff And especially think about staff that are new, so people, new learners, new staff that are coming on board, so that they continue to do the exact same process that you have made your quality improvement with. So one of the key pieces is engaging your leaders, and hopefully at this point you've already done that, but it needs, in order for sustainability to continue, your leadership needs to be on board. And for some of you, that will be both clinical and administrative leadership to ensure that they know what's going on and that they are committed to the ongoing project and the way that you're doing things now. The next is your support and your frontline staff. And they need to be involved right from the very beginning, and most of you have done that with your process map and inviting people to talk about the fishbone and things that you've learned. But at this point, we need to really understand what the training needs are of your team so that they can continue to do the changes that you've made and to do it the right time, the right way, the right time, every time. So that's something to think about. And one of the pieces with the tool that we're going to show you is it helps you to identify how to do that. So the next piece, of course, is communicating those benefits. And I'm hoping that all of you will be at the AMHO conference in May of next year. And some of you hopefully got a chance to attend HQT or the Patient Safety Quality Improvement Forum. So we're hoping that you'll all be presenting or having a poster at those next year, as well as other appropriate venues or conferences or chat groups or community of practices or regional discussions about the work that you've done. You've done some amazing work, and it's really helpful to have that story told to others, because they need to know what it is you've learned. It will short form their journey as well. So, and then the other piece is, though you're not going to measure as often as you were when you were doing your PDSA cycle, it's important to ensure that you've got a measurement that you can do. It might be every 6 months, it might be once a quarter, could be as little as once a year down the road, but a way of making sure that the gains that you've made are continuing. So what are your measurements that you're going to be tracking for that, and who is it going to be in charge of keeping track of those measurements, as well as where do they get communicated? So if there's a change, if things are not going the way that you're expecting to, does that go to the board? Does it go to a senior leaders meeting? What's the avenue for talking about when those gains are not being held? Who's measuring them? How are they measuring them? And who do they report to if things change? And so here's the hardwire pieces. So I'll just go through these two, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mike. So this is kind of a nice summary. If you want to go back and have a look at this down the road, these two slides will be very useful for you. So changes need to be tested in a variety of conditions, which you've done, and all staff, as many of your staff as possible, need to be involved in giving you some feedback about those changes. The improvements in the key processes and outcomes are clearly evident in your run charts, so at least 10 data points, and you're seeing that direction the way that you want it to go. All staff, all shifts have been trained, and consider your new staff and learners so that they're trained up front. And what's your process for letting new people know how it is we do things around here? You've got the necessary supplies and equipment. They're all in place and they're easy to get to. You have a small set of measures, and I was just speaking about this, that can be measured over time. Who's responsible for that? And who do they talk to if those results are coming back differently than you expect? If your performance declines, who is accountable? So you know who it is you need to talk to about that, to make sure that you catch that in the early moments, to make those changes or the tweaks or relook at what has gone wrong. And then it's standard work. And so with standard work, that means we have policies and guidelines and protocols that all support that kind of work. So I'm just going to hand it over to Mike at this point.
All right, hi there, folks. Just switching over, taking over Debbie's computer. So one of the really helpful tools to planning sustainability, because we talked a lot about why that's important. One of the helpful tools is the NHS Sustainability Guide, which was developed in the UK, and helps us actively think through what are those ingredients that need to maybe have some attention to give us our biggest opportunity to be successfully sustainable. And I'm going to attempt,
Go to the next slide, because it's right there.
on Debbie's computer, I'm going to attempt to pull up the tool. We'll see what happens. And it worked. Hopefully you can see that.
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, but there it is. Okay, so when you're doing this tool, it looks like this. I'm not connected. And it'll ask you a series of questions to think about that relate to your project, both in terms of the process, but also in terms of the staff and the folks that are involved in your project, but also around your organization as a whole. And it can be very helpful to go through this and identify those areas which may need some attention to, again, increase your likelihood of sustainability. And when you go through this questionnaire, it generates a report that looks like this. Hopefully you can see that. And it provides you with a score for each of those three sections. So for your process, the thing that it is that you're trying to sustain, that new or changed process, your overall staff score, and your organizational score, and then a total score for your likelihood of sustainability. And then in addition to that, it gives you a breakdown that looks like this, relating to those individual sustainability factors and where you may score high or low, or need to maybe put some further attention, which I'll talk about in a second. But going back a little bit to the questions, it can be really helpful too to not necessarily wait to the end of your project to go through this process, but actually earlier on in your project, when you've identified what it is you want to improve, it can be helpful to start thinking about these factors, because you'll notice they'll be woven throughout your project. And it's suggested that when teams complete this tool, each member of the team complete it on their own, from their own unique lens, and then come back as a team, compare scores, and pull out any themes, because you'll likely notice that if there's something that one person is maybe noticing that an area that we're not doing as well on, or could put some more attention to, usually others will notice that as well. And it's those conversations and what you do with the tool that are most important. And I'll share an example of that. So I'm going to click off the tool and go back to the slides. Hopefully you can see them. Let's go here. So recently I was up with a team in the north who's starting their project as part of Cohort 3 with E-QIP, and a very, very keen group who wanted to think about sustainability up front and have these discussions early to make sure that they're setting off on a pretty sound footing with their project. So each team member took some time, completed the tool on their own, and then in our meeting last week, folks shared back their respective scores. And it's important to note too, some of the factors and some of the questions when you're just setting off on your project won't be applicable. A lot of the questions can be very much focused on once you have a change idea, something that you're hoping to sustain. But I've circled here those question areas that actually apply not just to your specific project, but to the organization and your staff component overall. And there's 5 of them. So fit with organization, strategic aims and culture, clinical leadership engagement, senior leadership engagement, effectiveness of the system to monitor progress, and benefits beyond helping your patients. So you'll notice even if you don't have all your change ideas identified, these themes tend to permeate all quality improvement projects. So for this team, they're just starting off on their diagnostic journey. Their project still very early, but want to take a look at the area that they're hoping to improve and make sure again that they're going to be sustainable. So they noticed in doing this tool that a couple of those circled areas were actually scoring a little bit low. They noticed that fitting with the organization's strategic aims and the effectiveness of their system to monitor progress generally received lower scores in terms of sustainability. So right up front, before they've piloted any change ideas, or done any PDSAs, they've got two things that they maybe want to pay attention to. So starting to look at, can we maybe look at how our project that we're taking on fits with our organization's strategic priorities? Can we try and make that connection clear for folks so they see the value and how this fits into the larger picture? But trying to make that connection more clear and working through that. Similarly, the other area that was scored a little bit lower was the effectiveness of the systems to monitor progress. So this is important to know too, that potentially they're concerned that maybe their data system doesn't necessarily give them the information that they need to monitor if they're improving. So again, something that we want to think about right up front in our project, and how can we work with our data system so that we can monitor if the changes we make are an improvement. So all this to say that going through this process early on, or at least having the conversations around these different factors early on, can be helpful in planning your project and helping to address some of those things that in the future may hinder sustainability. It's also really great to come back to this tool closer to the end of your project. You know, maybe you've done some PDSA cycles with some of your change ideas. You're starting to see those process measures improve. You know, you got a pretty good sense that some of the change ideas that you've tried, you're going to want to continue with. Taking an opportunity at that point to then work through the sustainability tool can be very helpful, again, in seeing are those particular change ideas likely to be sustainable. So that's when those other factors that aren't circled, those more project level factors, will also be important. So things like the credibility of the evidence to support our change ideas, the adaptability of the improvement process that we're trying out, staff involvement in training to sustain the process that we're changing. All of these factors that we know will help us be more successful in the long run. And so again, these tools are helpful, but it's the conversations and what we do with it and how we use them to inform our planning and decision making that's most critical. This is just a little bit of a helpful nudge to get us to those conversations. So I'll just back up a little bit, but this is the what I just spoke to more or less, but a summary of those different factors that are covered in this tool. Again, those ingredients that help lead to successful sustainability. So from an organizational level, looking at infrastructure, fit with our strategic aims and culture. From a staffing level, making sure we have the right folks to engage, both at a leadership, clinical leadership level and senior leadership level. That staff have involvement and are being trained on the new process. That staff are agreeable and that behavior support change. We know that change is uncomfortable for a lot of folks often, so trying to flesh that out. And then those more process pieces, like the credibility of the evidence, the effective system to monitor our improvements, having clear benefits that we can communicate and that everybody's bought into that extend just beyond helping clients. So maybe our main benefit is helping clients, but we also are reducing duplication or reducing workload. That can be important to capture as well. And then the adaptability of our improvement process. So hopefully that makes some sense for you in terms of that tool, that sustainability tool. The second tool that's out there and available for you, and that our team can help support you on, is one that looks at spread. So sustainability is keeping things going and keeping things going well. And sustaining those gains that we've made for our project. Spread, as Debbie mentioned, is the other side of that coin, and that's actively disseminating that information across the system. So trying to share our successes or our failures even, because others can learn from that. And there's a tool that helps us to do that, and this is the HQO Spread Planner. And it's something that's available in the community of practice for you. And it looks at 4 steps for spread. So first, clarifying what it is that we want to spread, trying to be thoughtful and mindful about what specifically it is, what's the key piece that we want to spread elsewhere, determine how to spread the change, so what needs to be in place, who needs to be in place to spread that change, how do we want to go about that, what is our method, is it taking what we've learned and applying it or trying it out in a PDSA cycle at one other program or one other location, one other day, what does that process look like? Identifying and confirming the resources that we need. That's an important piece too, because usually if we're going to spread something, there needs to be resources in place, and that's where it's helpful to have a very engaged executive sponsor who can help align or make resources available for the work of spread, because it's not something that can usually happen by the flick of a switch. There's some resource and some leadership required there. And then how are we going to monitor and communicate the progress of spreading what it is that we do? So I'm going to click on the spread planner and show you a quick look of what that tool looks like. So hopefully you can see that on your screen. And so let's start on the second page. You'll notice that it really looks at that first area. The first section of this tool is clarifying what it is that's being spread. So there's a checklist on the left that'll ask you some questions to make sure that you've checked off. So for example, the components of this change have been, the components of the change to be spread have been described, so that we're clearly about describing what it is that we're going to spread. The team has documented what they're planning to spread, making sure that we have documentation, all of those key components to make us think about what it is exactly that we want to spread and share. And then to the right, you have your planning area, so the room for the team to document all those things. So what specific materials, tools, and then what's the status of each one of those as we move to spread. The next section looks at that second area, which is determining, now that we know what it is we want to spread, and we've very specific about that, how are we going to spread that? It allows us to plan, addresses some of the change management aspects to change. So there's a checklist again that we'd want to make sure we cover off, including things like the team has identified who the change is being spread to, the team has identified communication methods that work for this audience, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get a bit of a planning space again. We can work through the different aspects of what's being spread. So to who are we spreading it to? What's the best way to reach this group? The messages that are most important to this group, who's going to take the lead, and then by when. And it's important too when you think about that who will take the lead. Usually when it comes to spread, it's not just the team who's done the initial quality improvement project. Usually when we think about going to spread, it requires bringing in a lot of the new folks, likely from the area that we're looking to spread to, so that the entire onus doesn't land on the original team. This is the time that we want to be, again, relying on our executive sponsor to help make those connections and involve others in the spread process. Because there's both a pushing out of information, but there's also going to be a pulling in of information from the area that's hoping to be the new area that's spreading. And then the third part of this tool is identifying and confirming the resources. So again, there's a checklist which makes sure, for example, that we have leadership support and engagement to make sure that we have resources, time, things like that, equipment. And then we have a planning section to talk about the resources that we need and how we're going to go about doing that. And then the last and final section is monitoring and communicating progress. So again, we have a checklist that asks us questions about, do we have indicators, do we have a means and methods to collect data and information to see if our spread is successful, are we having the desired impact in this new area or not, how will we know, and then some planning area for that, so talking about our measurements, communication, and how we're going to capture and share this new learning from our spread efforts. If because usually it's not going to be something that's a plug and play. There's going to be lessons learned. It's not going to be a clear linear process. We may have to go back and do our own PDSA cycles to modify our spread plan in order for it to be successful in our new area. So this can be just, again, it's a tool that you can use, but it's meant to inform the discussion and the planning so that we're doing spread in a thoughtful way, not just assuming because it worked, we can throw it somewhere else and it'll have the same effect, but being conscientious about planning for that spread and monitoring how that goes. So that's the spread planner. And that gets us to our last part of our model for improvement. Filling in that model to here. I guess we'll open it up at this point to folks for questions, comments, thoughts, objections, whatever it is you have, and we'll try to do our best to answer that for you. So you can either type them in the question box if you have thoughts or questions, or you can talk, because I think everybody's unmuted now.
Hi, it's Ivan. Mine is just a comment, I think, more than a question. It's good to see you had illustrated there in a couple of slides where one of the teams had started looking at the sustainability model and some of those factors at the beginning of their, I don't know if they were cohort 3 or what have you. So one of the issues that's been raised with us is we kind of felt like we're not in a position yet to really provide good information because we're not very far along yet in our PDSA testing. So when I see that others are kind of looking at that even before they have all the answers, it's actually comforting to know that we can still garner what information we have, and also to share things that didn't work out as well as our successes so that other people can learn from the errors of our ways.
Great comment, Ivan. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, it's all about the conversation. And for this team, you're right, a lot of those questions didn't apply, but there were some, and those 5 specifically, that can still be helpful in provoking thought and conversation early on. So thanks for your comments.
Yeah, and I think, Ivan, as well, that notion about whether or not you're going to be able to track your progress and thinking about data sources early, because they're pretty important in the PDSA cycle and thinking about measurements. So if that's a problem that people are observing right up front, it invites you to start thinking about that more broadly, involving your senior leaders and your IT people to see if you can't get that straightened out in the early go.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions from folks?
Yeah, Azad here. Yeah, I agree with Ivan's comments as well. We are also not in the stage of spreading because we are also in the testing phase, in the final phase of PDSA, I would say. So, but it's definitely beneficial for us to know how we can sustain in a spread. After we complete the final phase of testing, and it will definitely help to plan ahead.
Great, thanks, Azad. And it's true what they say, right? Like PDSA is really a ramp, so not rushing to spread too early, but rather, we're ramping, testing, and then maybe there's the opportunity further down the road to spread by way of a PDSA, and thinking about spread in that way, planning, doing study and act when we do try something in a new location, new program, somewhere after our project.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments, or thoughts from folks? So, all of these tools are available in the community of practice, and you've got the digits for us and for your coaches you've worked with. So feel free to reach out anytime, and whether it's early in a project or later, and we'd be happy to chat with you about the use and utility of these tools and what to do with the information that comes back. There's a lot of information I think you can glean from these, and even if it's not good. And it was interesting, we were in Thunder Bay, and the team said, "Oh my gosh, we realized that some of these areas are a concern. We don't necessarily have the data system to monitor our sustainability." But it very quickly became from a "oh my gosh" conversation to well, let's think of how we can do this and make it better, so that we can monitor our progress, which is kind of fun. So we're here to support you and work with you anytime on this stuff.
Yeah, and we also have a longer version of the sustainability in our quick webinars. If you need the link for that, there's a whole section on sustainability where it talks about the tool as well, if you need just a reminder. Because, you may not be doing, if you're still finishing off your PDSAs, you may not do the sustainability tool for another month or so and might forget how to do it. Please give us a call if you need some help with completing it, because it's very helpful for thinking about how I keep this going.
So the links are available on the Community of Practice as well?
Yes, and if you like, we could send those out again as well, so they're in your email.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time. Nice to hear some familiar voices. And please reach out anytime. Always happy to chat QI.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It was really helpful. We'll reach you out for sure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.